Howdy, folks. I got one word for you. Badass. When you think of a badass, you might think of people like John Wick, Sarah Connors, or Creed. But what makes someone a badass? What is a badass? Well, Oxford Languages defines a badass as, quote, a tough, uncompromising, or intimidating person. Hi, my name is Gavin Ballard, and ever since I was a kid, messed that up, but anyway, right under that definition of the Oxford Languages one should be this man right here, Reeves. This guy was a real badass, and unlike the others I listed, he wasn't fiction, he was a real person. There's a comic book based off of him anyway. So my name is Gavin Ballard, and ever since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with the Wild West and the history of it. One of my favorite movies growing up was Django Unchained by Quentin Tarantino. It's a great film, and after I watched the movie, I researched its background and the history of it, and this was where I first learned about Reeves. So today I want to talk to you about why I think he's the definition of a badass, how he became a badass, and why I think he should be remembered. So in order to do that, let's rewind to July 16th, 1838 in Arkansas. Reeves is born a slave. And I'm kind of going to gloss over his early life because there's a lot and I want to get to the good bit. But growing up, Reeves was a blacksmith slave and who eventually fought in with the Confederate side on the Civil War, fighting with his master here. And one night, though, his master and him get in an argument over a game of cards. It escalates to the point where Reeves punches his master in the face. So Reeves, being a black man who just punched a white man, obviously is really bad. Now with the threat of him being lynched, he flees into the Indian Territory, which is very important, which is where everything takes place. So Reeves fled into this Indian Territory, becoming friends with the native tribes, learning their language and living with them for a good while. And this Indian Territory was so lawless and so dangerous that historian Art Burton compared it to post-insurgency Afghanistan. Quote, you could just lose your life over, that's him, that's Art Burton. Anyway, so you could just lose your life over your hat, your horse, your gun, your woman, any damn thing. You're looking at a little over 200 U.S. Marshals who have been killed in line of duty to this day. It had to be the greatest battleground between crime and law in the history of the United States, end quote. So after the Civil War, this place became a hot spot for various outlaws. So people on the run and all this. But Reeves, living in the territory, being friends with the natives and speaking their language, had an edge on the others. And this edge was noticed by the U.S. Marshals, and who eventually Reeves was hired as a deputy, which means he could go into the Indian Territory as a lawman. And this is the beginning of his badassness and the start of everything. So to paint a mental image in your head of who this guy is, he was a staggering 6 feet 2 inches tall, 180 pounds of muscle with a badass handlebar mustache, very recognizable. And in his 32 years of service as a deputy, he arrested over 3,000 criminals, which is 94 per year, by the way, and killed 14 reported criminals in self-defense. Self-defense, maybe. But, so, one of my favorite stories that is a great example of this is back in the summer of 1884. Reeves had to face the famous Bruntner brothers, okay? So this time, it seemed like the criminals had an upper hand on Reeves. So they held him at gunpoint, and Reeves, being known as the Indomitable Marshal, meaning unable to be defeated, they started to taunt the man, and Reeves kept his cool and simply just said, ask for the date. So Reeves just simply asked for the date while being held at gunpoint. And when the outlaws asked why, he responded with their arrest papers needed to be dated because they were coming with him dead or alive. And the outlaws burst out laughing. And and Reeves took advantage of this distraction, shooting the two men behind him and moving out of the way of the gun barrel. And as soon as he moved out of the way, killed the two men behind him, he grabs the gun barrel, disarms the man, and cracks the man with his own gun on the skull, killing all three of them in seconds. That's a true story. It's insane, I know. But let me tell you one more quick story that I think really shows you how scary of a man this guy was. So with each arrest and bounty collected, he became more famous and more feared than ever. One of my favorite examples of this story is in the summer of 1903 with a man named Jerry McIntosh. So Jerry McIntosh Jerry McIntosh was a drunk man and was in a drunken rage. He drags his wife out of bed and douses her in oil, setting her on fire and leaving her in critical condition, but still alive. Jerry runs away and gets out of town as fast as he can, but Jerry had a dream, or rather a nightmare. See, according to the July 16th, 1903 edition of the Daily Admirette here, quote, McIntosh says he dreamed last night that Deputy Marshal Reeves came upon him in the brush, and when he jumped up to run, the deputy shot and killed him. When he awoke and realized it was only a dream, he decided to come to town and give up immediately, end quote. So, with all this said, you can see why I think this guy is the definition of a badass, and why I think he should be remembered today. See, with Black History Month just ending and commemorating several black figures, I believe that Bass Reeves should be alongside people like MLK and Harriet Tubman for being a black man who faced several different trials and tribulations, and who should be remembered as the greatest lawman to ever live. In conclusion, Bass Reeves is a badass. Thank you.
All right.